Hello, and welcome to episode 49 of Constructing Comics, a podcast building stories one page and one panel at a time. On this episode, we have an interview with Jonas Scharf, the artist of comics like the Avengers Halloween Special, Blood and Gourd, Bone Parish, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, War of the Planet of the Apes, and Warlords of Appalachia. This is Matt, and I'm joined by my co-host Noah.
Hey there, and I'd love to bring in Jonas. How you doing, Jonas?
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure.
Jonas, normally what we do is we just have everybody do a brief intro and talk about their comics, and then we'll do a deep dive and go into some of the pages and some of the ins and outs of your art.
Okay.
So, Jonas, were you, based on your biography in the back of Bone Parish, you've always wanted to be a comic illustrator. That's correct, right?
Yeah, pretty much. When I was a teenager, I pretty much knew that that's what I wanted to do. So I always drew comics, even during my school time, and then in college or university, however you'd want to call that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I always wanted to do that. I didn't exactly know how I'd get in, but then that sort of just happened. But we can get into that later, I guess.
Oh yeah, was that? Oh, we'd love to go over it now. Was that? So what college did you go to? And that was in Germany, correct? Right?
Yeah. So it's called a Fachhochschule. So it's a University of Applied Sciences.
Okay.
I studied design there, and that was 3.5 years. No, 4 years. 4 years. Yeah.
The design element in your work is very strong, and we're going to get into that as we look at some of your artwork, but that makes a lot of sense that you have a design background. Was illustration just something that came naturally, like, putting a pen to paper?
I don't know if it really came naturally. I always loved drawing, but I think, like, looking back at it, I'm not sure if it was about the drawing itself, but more the storytelling. Because even as a kid, I'd take little Lego figures and tape them into little comic books that I made myself. So I don't know if I'd ever have an interest in just drawing any abstract stuff. So it always has to tell a story, I guess.
That's really cool. And that's clear. You have a very strong visual storytelling thing. And we've talked about this a little bit before, and you have, you're inspired by comics and film and a lot of other visual media of storytelling. Is there one in particular? Was there one piece of artwork that sort of sparked your interest as sort of an impressionable young person that sort of made you this is something I would love to create something like this someday?
I'm not sure if there was one thing. As a kid, I used to read a lot of comics like Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, that kind of stuff. I pretty much, during my school time, when I initially learned how to read and write, I would read a lot of comics, so that helped. And I kept reading comics, I guess, thanks to the Star Wars comics from Dark Horse. I discovered those when I was, I think, 11 or 12, I think. So I kept reading those until I guess I was a teenager, 16, 17, something like that. And then I got into other stuff. I always watched YouTube videos about comic art. There's this Ghibli one with Stan Lee, Comic Book Greats, I think it's called. I watched that a million times, I think. So I always kept an eye out for, I guess, good art or art that I liked.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I always read comics. So.
And there's a lot of great art in those original Dark Horse Star Wars comics. So that I can relate there, because I devoured those things in the middle school, elementary school age, 11 to 12 years old as well. So when you got out of college, and you have a very cool DeviantArt page, was that how you were discovered? Was sort of just by putting your artwork online, or were you sending your portfolios to publishers?
So I after I finished school, I was, I think, 18 or 19. I discovered that there was this thing called DeviantArt, and I opened an account and uploaded some stuff. And at this point, it wasn't quite like the I don't know. I don't know how to say that. It's a little out there now, I guess, with like fetish stuff.
Yes.
So it wasn't quite there yet at this point. So yeah, I uploaded my stuff there for a while, and then after I graduated from university, I did some like pitch pages for, with other creators I met on DeviantArt, and those all went nowhere pretty much. And then out of the blue, while I was finishing up one of those gigs, Eric Halbern, my editor on Warlords and Parish, just sent me a message on DeviantArt, and then we talked, via email, and then he asked me if I wanted to draw Warlords, so that's how that happened.
And speaking of Warlords, I think we have Philip. Philip, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can. Thanks for joining us. We were just sort of going through Jonas's backstory and discussing like his joy of comics and how he got into comics. But thanks for joining us.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me back. Hey, Jonas.
Hey, Philip.
How these guys treating you so far?
Can't complain.
Yet.
Give them time.
Yet.
Dude, congrats on Parish. It looks amazing every month.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I think I have to keep congratulating you on like pretty much, there was the Last Sons of America thing, and then Last God.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it's been, I'll say, exciting. It's been a little nuts, but definitely exciting.
Cool. So, Philip, I know that your time is limited. So while we have both of you, maybe we could do a little bit of discussion about how you two collaborated on Warlords. So could you give us a little background on how you guys teamed up there?
Yeah, well, I mean, I heard Jonas talking about Eric Harburn a little bit. Eric is an incredible editor, and not just creatively, he's also really awesome at finding new talent. And we were looking at potential artists for Warlords, and it was a very short search. I mean, there were some great people on the list. I mean, we were looking at some really nice stuff, but Jonas' stuff just really jumped out at me. And I can't remember the book that it was from, but it seemed like it was like a period crime book or something. And there was I can't remember, like, I wish I knew what the books were that the art was from, but the quality was so high, and it fit the style of Warlords so well that the search pretty much stopped right there. And after that, the collaboration, at least from my end, was extremely easy. Honestly, I don't know how much I'll be able to tell you about it because it was just so smooth. I would send in a script, and Jonas would draw it, and we would interact occasionally. Like, we would talk about little things like, well, for one thing, at Boom, they like all the interaction to go. The editors like to mediate the interaction.
Oh, okay.
So there were not a whole lot of times where we spoke without Boom also being involved. But we would we had like a FaceTime call or two. We mostly just kind of emailed about how things would go, and things would come back and look so solid. And whenever there was a note, as I remember, it was dealt with very, very quickly and easily. And Jonas was just a brilliant collaborator.
And Jonas, do you share the same feelings about Philip? Here's the time that the truth can come out. This is a safe space. Yeah.
Yeah, no, the scripts were great. Because I myself didn't really, like, this was my first like really published gig with a professional like script, and so I really didn't have anything to complain about. And as Philip said, Eric really did a great job like mediating. He answered any questions I had. So if I guess anybody has something to complain about things not being smooth, it's probably Eric. yeah, I think Philip and I got a feeling that when I read his scripts, I sort of knew what he wanted to go for. So I just tried to do that and not embarrass myself, I guess.
Well, you didn't. It's a great book. It's such a solid 4-issue series, and it's such a well fleshed out world, and it fleshes itself out in such a short time. Were you pretty, do you have trouble with deadlines, Jonas, or are you a pretty fast worker when it comes to pages like the ones you did on Warlords?
So since this was my first job basically on a regular schedule, and the first issue is 32 pages or 28, something like that. Philip, do you know?
Yeah, I think it was 28, if I remember right.
28.
26 or 28. Yeah, they gave us a few extra pages we didn't even ask for it, but they were like, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to make this first issue a little bit longer before I think it might have been before the script was even turned in. So it was really nice to have that extra space. Yeah,
so the first issue was oversized, and so that was the first, I guess, issue I drew professionally was an oversized one, and I wasn't sure if I was really, or I'm not sure if I'm a fast worker or if I just work too much. I think it's getting better where I'm getting more efficient, but usually it's just long hours at the drawing board.
And Philip, did you see things at like each stage, like the layout stage, the pencil stage, the inking stages, or did you just see like almost completed inked pages?
I saw every stage as it came in. It was really great. Because, cool. And I definitely prefer that. Like I really hate to not see stuff until a lot of work's been done, because then if there's a problem, I really feel guilty giving notes on something that took hours to give. So I really, as a collaborator myself, I always prefer to see the layouts just to make sure we can, not to micromanage, but to make sure that if there is some kind of a miscommunication that it gets dealt with before any real time goes into it. So I really like seeing every stage when I can, and that's how it went down for Warlords.
Yeah, and I'm sure the artist appreciates that. I mean, spending a whole day inking a page only to find out that this character was standing on the wrong side of the panel, or that would be pretty frustrating. Catching that in the layout or the penciling stage is for the best.
Sure. When this stuff happens, it's usually not the artist's fault. Whenever there's been miscommunications, it's because something was not specific enough in the script.
Yes.
So really, when I'm giving notes at layouts, it's usually because of my own stupidity, not because of anything the artist had done wrong. So I really appreciate having that opportunity.
Yeah, I think, I mean, just kind of speaking as a writer, I think sometimes we live so much in our head that it makes sense to us. And we haven't been exactly clear because that story's been in our head for so long that it's clear to us. And then when somebody comes back to us, we say, oh, we really weren't as clear as we could be. So yeah, I agree with you there that a lot of times that might be where most of the communication issues stem from.
Yeah, one nice thing about working with Jonas was there were maybe more on this book. This is only my second printed book, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And when we were working on this book, often I would get a layout back and it would be very different. Like a panel would look different, or a page layout would look different than I imagined. But there wasn't no reason to change it. What Jonas had done worked just as well or better than what I had envisioned. And so it helped me be a better collaborator. When you get a page back and there's some kind of a thing that really has to be changed for a reason that matters, then yeah, you can make notes. But it really was a collaboration in that Jonas envisioned a lot of things differently than I did. And when it came back, I decided to just leave it because there was, I don't want to micromanage the artist if there's no reason to,
Sure.
And it just came back looking great, pretty much every time.
Yeah.
Did you ever feel disappointed with some panels, I guess? Because I have that same feeling with expectations when the colored pages come in, where it's just so different from what you imagined. and it's oftentimes it's very good, or probably even better than you imagined, but just the disconnect, I guess, between what you imagined and then what you get back. Did you ever feel, I guess, disappointed on some panels?
No, sometimes there would be, I'd see it for the first time and I would be surprised and be like, oh, I envisioned it like this. But then as I looked at the whole, sometimes artists are thinking about things like, I can't speak for you, but people would think about the composition of the entire page, which is something that I typically do not think about. Like if I'm thinking about a whole page, I might, in my mind, envision a lot of close-ups and not really a lot of establishing shots or something. And when I get the page back, there will be a wider variety of distance and perspectives than I had envisioned, that actually makes the page overall as a work of art work much better.
Yeah.
So I don't remember ever being like disappointed as much as just like, and I had to kind of like evaluate it differently and see if there was any reason to change it, and if not, then I would just shut up.
Yeah. The close-ups is a bit of a bad habit for me, or it used to be, I guess. Eric really did a great job, like training me to not do like medium or close shots every time. So
Cool.
That was like constant notes from him to like pull out and show a bit.
Yeah, it's a bad habit of mine too. Like I just from movies, I guess. Like I'm used to seeing a conversation go down where you have a lot of close-ups of people's faces.
Yeah, that's probably it. Yeah,
And that's something I've noticed rereading Warlords and now reading Bone Parish, Jonas, with your work, is that you have a very nice rhythm of close-ups to medium shots to wide shots, not just in like action sequences. In Warlords, like there's this one sequence and where it's at the fourth issue where there's the knife fight between Cade and the super soldier, and it constantly gets closer and closer to the action, but then it's sort of a wide shot for that final bashing. Yeah. But also in Bone Parish, you have this really sweet moment, I think at the end of issue 1, where the mother, whose name I can't remember, she's getting high to be with her dead husband, and there's that moment of urgency where she's losing him. And it cuts these very close-up shots, and then it's got this nice wide pullback where she's holding him. Now, is stuff like that for you, is that instinctive, or do you rely heavily with the writer and their sensibilities when you're doing those sequences?
I guess it depends. Like sometimes that stuff is in the script. I believe with the knife fight, I'm not sure, but I think there was like close-ups on the knife or something like that was probably in the script. But then for other stuff, it's it really depends. Sometimes I improvise. I usually don't think about it that much. There's just some things just have to like feel right, and when you're trying to overthink it too much, those are usually the harder pages. The nicer or the easier pages are usually when it just sort of feels right, and you know where the panels need to go and how big they are going to be and what kind of shot.
Okay, that's really cool to know, because I was wondering about that with certain action sequences in both books, because they're very well coordinated on your part. And with you, Philip, when you were writing the action sequences, were you pretty descriptive, or would you let Jonas sort of just guide the action where it needed to go?
I think Philip might be having a few audio problems, so we'll have to come back to him on that.
Okay. Yeah. Well, so with on Warlords, then I guess, Jonas, like, were there certain times, because like one of the amazing things about that book is how much world building you can fit in, while on top of that, like some of the most brutal action I've ever seen in a comic. Were you given a lot of freedom there?
What do you mean exactly?
Were you able to let your imagination go free with sort of how an action sequence would play out? Whether it would be that knife fight at the end of issue 4, or the big battle in issue 2 where Cade is invading the the village with his all-terrain vehicle?
Okay. Yeah. So for pretty much all of my projects, I've had a full script. So usually all that stuff is pretty much described in the pages of the script, where like I did like the designs for the vehicles and that kind of stuff. But then in the script, it clearly says that he is driving into town with this vehicle, and since Philip really knows his military stuff, that really helps a lot.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So, Phil, we were kind of discussing the close shots, the medium shots in the knife fight at the end of is it issue 1?
4.
Issue 4.
The knife fight, yeah, it's at the end with one of the big guys.
Yeah. So, do you remember when you wrote that? Did you have sort of like shots in mind, or even shots dictated like in the script, like these are close-ups and then we're going to pull back? Because we were discussing that.
I don't think I usually specify it on perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Jonas can correct me if that's not true. I don't remember being really picky about where perspective is from. I don't usually get into the details like that unless it becomes a problem. Like if you're working with an artist who kind of strays deliberately from the script to make something less of a problem to draw or something, and it messes up the page, you might have to start getting more specific, like the knife is thrust in from the right with the left hand an angle of 12 degrees, like so you're kind of put your foot down if something really has to be a certain way. But that never really came up with Jonas. There was one moment, I think, when I specified an aspect of the fight where it might have been when the arm was coming off or something. Spoilers.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Spoiler alert.
I guess this book's been out for 3 years and it's probably fine.
Okay.
There was like from a jiu-jitsu perspective, if there was a thing where there wouldn't have been any leverage from a certain perspective, and so I asked that something change a little bit in that. But as far as the perspective or the distance or any of that, I don't think I got into the weeds much with that, and let Jonas just do what he wanted to do. Like I feel we established a lot of trust over the course of the series, and there was no need for any of that.
Very cool. Do you, Philip? So, are there at times that like you do sort of think that you have an interesting perspective, or the shot just sort of seems to come to you that in your head that like say maybe like every once in a great while you will say, hey, this should be an overhead shot, or this should be a close up?
Yeah, I will. Sometimes the script these days will have very specific mentions of a perspective. If there's a really cool layout that I want to try, or envisioning it in a very specific way that makes it unusual, I'll call it out and be like, hey, so-and-so, this is what I envisioned for this. See if it works. And if it doesn't work for you, then we can totally do something else. But this is how I envisioned it. So I would give a specific note with a caveat that I'm not making you do this. Like, you're the artist, do what you want. Here's how I envisioned it. If you find a better way, that's fine. That's pretty much as demanding as I ever get.
So it's sort of like a suggestion, an open suggestion, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, if there's yes, basically, like there's a page in an upcoming book that I wrote that involves a much higher page count than I normally do, or panel count rather, in which it's a super close up on this little spot in the ceiling, and then it pulls away a little bit, and something is dripping onto the ceiling from below. And at first you're like, I don't get it. Like I want there to be a moment of confusion for the reader, like I don't know what I'm looking at. And then it backs up, and it'll jump from this perspective to a different one, and then to a different one, and you gradually get a bigger and bigger picture of what you're looking at, and then that leads up to the big page turn when you see what you're actually seeing. For something like that, I feel like it's important to go ahead and call out what you're imagining. Okay. And then if it doesn't work for that, like if that layout does not speak to that artist, you have to respect that. Like if you force someone to do something they're not comfortable with, it's it's unlikely that you'll get inspired results. You know, you want the artist to do their best work to feel inspired and all that. So yeah, I try not to force the issue very often, but when there's a very specific kind of vision, or if there's there's a page of super like full length, very narrow panels, like left to right, 4 panels, all extremely long and narrow. You can call that out and see if it works, and see what the artist comes back with. And if the artist is just feeling a different solution, then you should respect that.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of page turns, I'm gonna share my screen right here and talk about my favorite page turn in Warlords. And I think I brought it up to both of you guys on separate occasions, but I just want to know if you guys have any background on this one right here. If you guys can see my screen, just let me know. Where the commando cyborg squad is coming into the building, and they think they're winning, and then they come around this corner, and then the next page is this like half page of the guy dead in the shower right here.
Yeah.
And it's my favorite moment of the comic. It's just a great moment of storytelling, just a great page turn reveal. So right here, was this something that was in the script that you wrote in, Philip, and then you just sort of like let Jonas run with it?
What did I write? What in? I'm sorry.
The page turn, I guess.
Yeah, like I'm always very specific about, like, the page turns are a big deal to me. Like I feel like the page turns are the thing that compel the reader forward. It's kind of like, like imagine imagine like an online TV show of 1-minute episodes, where at the end of every 1 minute there's a big cliffhanger or something that makes you come back. That's kind of what this is. So
I'm sorry, you go ahead.
I had another book in which we're trying to fit everything into this massive trade. And there's something weird with I guess we were right up against the limit for a number of pages that we could do without paying a higher printing cost or something. These are matters that I don't usually think about for when publishers are dealing with it. And they would be like, okay, we got to find a way to trim a few pages. Oh, I have this great idea. What if we don't have to worry about the page turns, we can just double it up. Like they wanted to take out like the buffer pages and just basically it would offset the page turn 1 page for an entire issue, and then again 2 issues later, and then again 2 issues later. And I was like, absolutely not, man. Like this, I put a ton of thought. Maybe not everyone does, but I put a ton of thought into my page turns, and it doesn't always work out like you want it to. Like there are times when you have to just suck it up and have a reveal on the following page. There are times when that happens, and it's unfortunate. But you always want the big. Like, forget me. Is the big dead body shot here? Is that an even number page after the page turn?
Yeah, that's it. Well, I guess that would be an even number page turn.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can't have it, but especially in a book like Warlords, where you're trying to fit so much information into 4 issues, every word in this comic counts.
Right.
So there were times when it didn't get my way, but when the page turn is usually a real big deal for me.
This one is awesome. And Jonas, do you have an approach to a page turn, or leading an eye off of the page to the next one?
When I do my layouts, I usually probably in the back of my mind, I probably think about it, but it's usually so it just has to. I really go after feeling. So a lot of people probably are a lot more, I guess, more thoughtful isn't the right word. What is the right word? Cerebral about it, I guess. I guess sometimes it just what you feel is often a pretty good choice, like in my experience. So it's I don't know. I'm struggling.
Oh no,
here.
that's fine. Yeah, there's a lot of fear, I guess, in these pages right here. I guess a lot of suspense. So do you sort of take upon that tension in the story onto yourself and try to put that on the page?
Yeah, always. Like when I read a script, usually like you get a certain sense of the page, you get a certain feeling. Sometimes I see like almost how the shot could look like in my head, and then I just try to like get that on the page. Usually I don't get it quite right, but sometimes I do, and then that's a good day. But yeah, it's very much about the feeling I get from the script, and yeah, then the rest is just how many panels are there, how do they need to be placed in order for the storytelling, I guess, to make sense and to flow. And yeah.
I will say, looking at this page now, I'm certain that I would have been struggling, like losing sleep at night, because we had to have those two little, like on the panel with the dead guy, having to show those two little panels leading up to that. It would have been great if we could have put that on the previous page, but there's just no way. So the one like thing that kind of made it okay was that those two panels are very brief and there's nothing super meaningful that you have to read. So if your eye can kind of breeze through those first two panels and then kind of focus on the big dead guy. It's not like there was a meaningful conversation happening in the first two panels where you had to linger, because that would have messed up the whole flow.
Yeah. And I love, Jonas, your approach to having those first two panels be sort of minimal in their detail, but you still get a lot of emotion through the shadows and a lot of intensity in there. So that center image, that big image on the right with the dead guy in the bathroom, you can really go full detail on that.
Yeah, I figured if we have to have those two panels in there, they'd have to be pretty like easy to read, pretty graphic. And Doug, the colorist, did a really great job making them probably as graphic as one could. So yeah.
And do you use photo reference, Jonas? Did you pose yourself bathroom with your leg up on the toilet for this page? I guess.
I probably should use more photo reference, but I don't use. I use it for like environments to get inspiration, just to figure out like. And I think I've gotten better about this as time went on, to really inform like the designs or the environments, to look at photo reference beforehand. But then when I draw, for better or worse, I usually don't use a lot of photo reference.
Wow, you have a really vivid imagination then. Like, and yeah, like that's
well,
violence.
Looking at that shot, I don't know if that's a compliment, but
well, yeah. As I was saying that, I was like, that's probably not the best compliment. But let's look at some other stuff that would compliment that, I guess. Okay, that's also really violent. Well, let's like, I guess
as a child.
yeah. Well, like, let's talk about, I guess, the first issue, the first image of the first issue. I really love this, and Jonas, you're really good at landscapes, and it's showing the environment or the setting. When this image comes up, yeah, this one right here. So, Philip, did you provide him with Kentucky photos, like references or things like this?
I did. Let's see. I didn't at first, and then when I first came back, there were some trees that looked more like
German pine trees.
Yes, exactly. It looked more like a German forest.
Yeah.
And I was like, this looks awesome, but it's somehow terribly wrong. And I was like, wait, no, the trees. That's the trees. And so I would, I put out, I found a bunch of pictures of trees that look more familiar to me. The thing is, like, the Appalachian Mountains do go through North Carolina as well, and other states. And it's, I couldn't say for sure that every part of the Appalachians looked like what I remembered. But I did find some trees and some pictures to send them to make them look more like this. And there were still pine trees visible, and that's fine. Like, it's not like there are none. in Kentucky. The way it looks here looks great. We did have that is one that we had to collaborate a little more closely on to get the look right. But the way the town is kind of nestled in the down below the mountains like that, that's all like exactly how it is out there. You would normally see like an interstate somewhere, but aside from that, it's like, and you don't want that in this anyway. You want it to feel timeless. You want this to be a town that could have been, until you see the drone hovering, you want it to look like a town that could have existed 100 years ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, it turned out awesome.
And Jonas, is this sort of a mix of things for you when you're putting this image together? Are you combining multiple photos into this one landscape?
Yeah, I probably took some of those reference photos that Philip provided, and I don't really like.
To be clear, I didn't have any photos like of a landscape like this. They were all much closer and a very different perspective, just to show him the kinds of trees that he'd see. But there's nothing that looked like this. This is all out of his head.
So usually, I try to like figure out elements that are sort of I guess iconic, or that you could that are a representation for what that kind of thing would look like. So I don't really copy the photo reference, but I try to like understand it and sort of put it on the page. I really like drawing like trees and nature in general. So I draw a lot of it from my head, but yeah, as Philip said, that sometimes it helps to have photo reference, especially if it's not an environment that I'm very familiar with.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah.
It was
with
getting these pages back was so exciting. Like every time I got pages, it was I don't know if Jonas, I don't know if you were sending them in batches to Eric or if it was like page by page, but I always got them in these big batches. Sometimes I wouldn't see anything until the entire issue was in, and then we would give notes like on the whole issue at once. And just seeing them, like seeing the layout, even just the layouts come in was awesome. And then seeing them go from that to this was just so awesome. Like the first page I had, I envisioned, I think it was the first page of Remender and Scalera's Black Science, if I remember right. It was or no, actually, no, it wasn't. It might have been the first page of Nameless, this other sci-fi comic, where it was basically one big panel, like it was like a big splash page, and then there was a full width, like a very shallow, wide panel, kind of superimposed on top of it, and then another one below that, if I remember right. It was like, so it looked like 5 panels, even though it was really just one big one with 2 little ones chopping it up. And I thought that was just the coolest shit ever. And yeah. I think I mentioned something like that when we were laying out when we were talking about page 1 of Warlords. And he came back with something a little bit different, but still like very much like that. It was still a big splash page that showed different, you get the far away shot and then the medium distance shot and then the super close up at the very bottom of the body, like trapped in melted concrete, and then little panels over the top of that showing a guy talking into a microphone. I just love that page. That's one of my favorite pages of the series even now.
I actually have that one on here. Let me pull that up really quick. This guy to work, because that one is that's a great bookend to the story as well. There we go.
So let me ask a question while we're looking for this image. Jonas, you work traditionally, right?
Yes.
And
all pencil and ink.
Do you ink like on like a light box, or do you do scans and then ink on top of, like, I guess the scans?
Now I do my little layouts on like a small sheet of paper, and then I scan those in, send them in for approval, and then I blow those up to the full size comic boards, and then I pencil and ink on top of those layouts directly. So I print them out in blue line and pencil over it. For Warlords, I think I had like a smaller, like intermediate size for the pencils, where I drew the pencils at like half size, and then the layouts were half size of that. So it's the German system. It's DIN, so it's DIN A5, DIN A4, and then DIN A3. So those are all like halves of each other. So yeah, but now I just print the layouts out and draw over those.
That's very cool. Yeah, here's the page that Philip was talking about.
I love this page, and there's so much information on it.
Yeah,
like it was, again, because of the space. Even with the oversized comic, I was just cramming things in, trying not to make it feel cramped. Like at the beginning of that first panel, you establish that Orrin Roth is the guy speaking, and later you'll learn who that is. Pretty much at the end of the issue, you think he's just some Rush Limbaugh style media guy until later. Mm-hmm. Then you get his monologue, and you see the picture of what he's talking about, and realize there's two sides of the story. Like if you dig deep into this first page, you can just get a ton of information without the big exposition dump that I usually try to avoid. I
remember you had a lot of I guess lore, and then you have also those songs at the beginning of each issue. You had so much of that world already established in your head, the flags and all that stuff with the different stars and what that would represent. So it's a shame we really couldn't get into all of that with the 4 issues.
Yeah, well, they were great about letting me do the songs and putting. There were these little bits and pieces of speeches and interviews and gospel from the Book of Luther and things like that printed in the front of each single issue. Those didn't make it into the trade, unfortunately, but those helped just squeeze a little bit more lore into it so that the lore hounds could have more to read if they wanted it.
Yeah, I love this book, and love to see you guys work together again in this world or in another world.
Oh man, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, Jonas is everyone's noticing Jonas's work, and I'm doing some more big profile things here soon too. So I'm still very hopeful that we can come back to this.
That would be so awesome.
Yeah, I just wish I could draw faster. Like I wish I could draw 3 books at a time, but
don't change anything.
Yeah, please
I won't.
Yeah. Yeah. Before you have to go, Philip, I don't know if you have much time left to answer one more question, but with this page, that's really great is that you don't see Orrin Roth until the end of the issue in full. And there's this sort of great build-up to a sort of a villain reveal at the end. It's kind of like the shark from Jaws, I guess, where it's like you don't see him fully until he's the full threat. And he's like calling down, to rain fire basically on Kentucky.
Right.
Really well done. And was that in the script?
Yes. Yeah, totally.
That's very cool.
I think, how did it go? I think in the original draft, I don't think we showed him. I tried to, nobody called him the president, I think, until, I want to say maybe the very final page. Or maybe the page before the last. I don't remember. But it was, held it back as long as we possibly could. But yeah, I'm very happy how it turned out in the end, because we wanted that big full page splash of Cade, driving that vehicle down into gunfire and all that. So it turned out perfect how it turned out.
Yeah, it really did. It's a great moment.
Yeah, this script did change a lot from the first draft to the end. There was at first the president had another handler that kind of, we were seeing mostly the handler until the end of the issue when we finally saw the president himself. We changed that, but all the changes that we made were good ones. I was very happy with it. I try not to be too I've learned not to be too precious with little details. I try to keep my eye on the macro when we're dealing with micro, things like panel layouts and, dialogue.
Yeah. There's a lot of cool stuff. A lot of cool design within the world, within the script, and within the artwork itself.
Thanks. Well, Jonas is awesome. We've been trying to get together on other projects too. Like there have been other opportunities. Jonas reached out to me about another creator-owned thing, like a small press thing a couple of years ago that didn't work out, unfortunately. And I reached out to him for a licensed book recently that didn't work out for scheduling reasons. And but I think it's something we both want to do, and I feel like we'll definitely get a chance at some point. Hopefully on this, but definitely on something.
I hope so. I'll be there. I'll be there to order it all. Yeah.
Thanks, dude.
So, Philip, I know that these are the last couple of minutes that we have you here for. So why don't you talk about some of these things that you have coming out here very soon?
Oh, okay. Well, in October, I've got The Last God coming out from DC Comics. I'm super stoked about it. It's a comic series I wanted to read actually for a long time. It's a story that's equal parts epic fantasy and horror that goes like all the way, both directions. It follows two parallel stories of two, heroic fellowships, or supposedly heroic fellowships living 30 years apart in this fantasy world, both fighting, the hordes of the god in the void, the last living god in this world. And the second fellowship is forced to redeem the mistakes of the first. It's epic sword and sorcery badassery, basically, but it's also got undead, apocalypse, survival horror, Tolkien-esque world building, body horror. It goes all the way. Like, it really is a true fantasy book, but it's also a true horror book. This is something I wanted to read for a long time myself. Working with Riccardo Federici on that. He's recently of Dark Knight's Metal and Aquaman.
Nice.
And he's been a joy to work with. He's an Italian artist. He's incredible. So it's really fun. There's also a lot of, we talked a little bit about the lore in Warlords, and it's actually very much the case with Last God as well, where there's 4 to 6 pages at the back of every issue that's devoted just to world building, to like prose writing. So you'll see folk tales and more original music like I did with Warlords. Histories, bits of gospel that exist in this world to get pictures of the mythologies and all that. More sketches by Riccardo. There's enough here that tabletop gamers will have everything they need to, to build their own campaigns in this world if they want to.
That'd be awesome.
That comes out October 30th from DC, and also Marvel Zombies. It's called Marvel Zombies Respawn, which is a kind of a reboot of the whole Marvel Zombies franchise. And that is with Leonard Kirk, and that comes out, I think, the same day, actually, also October 30th.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
And
big day for you.
Yeah, it's a good day. And that one, it's just a first issue. It's like an oversized issue that kind of sets the stage for what's going to follow. So it's, we'll get one issue in October, and then a few months later we'll get the rest weekly, I believe is the plan, but we'll see what they decide to do.
It's pretty awesome. It's so close to Halloween.
Yeah, totally. It's I'm sure that was purely coincidental.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to both of those projects, and it would be great if Jonas, we could get you onto the Marvel Zombies, because your Halloween special last year was so amazing.
Oh my God.
And yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah,
that was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those are my books. I'm also doing I'm co-writing a book with my friend Steve Orlando that I can't talk about just yet, but we're going to announce what that is, hopefully at New York Comic Con.
Oh, great. Cool. Very cool. We'll be looking for that. Yeah,
well,
we'll
Jonas,
have to have you on.
Jonas, this is a pleasant surprise. Really glad we got to talk on here.
Yeah.
And let's talk again soon. Would love to do a book with you. And I've been loving Boat Parish, man, every month.
Thank you. Yeah, hopefully we see each other in October.
Yeah, are you going to be at the con?
Yeah, pretty sure.
Oh, yeah. Okay, well, let's...
Flight is booked, hotel too, so yeah.
All right, let's drink.
Awesome. Sounds good, man. Sounds good. Very excited for Last God, so...
Thank you, sir.
I'll give you a review by then.
Yeah, do that. I'll send you something.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being on, Philip. And we'll have to have you on closer to When Last God and Marvel Zombies come out, because there's multiple episodes in there as far as content goes.
Oh my God, I could go on for years.
Yeah, we would love for you to do that on the show.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be on.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right, gentlemen. Sorry I got to split, but thanks so much for having me on.
Oh, no worries. Thanks for joining us.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
All right. So, how about if we look at some? Would we want to look at some Bone Parish pages here?
Yeah. Well, I had some questions about your style, Jonas, and sort of how it's evolved over across all your projects and stuff.
Yeah.
I got this great page up here from Bone Parish right now. Mm-hmm. And what I noticed is that on Warlords and War for the Planet of the Apes, and even on the little bit that you did in the Halloween special last year, it seemed to be your materials were, of course, you penciled and then you inked over that, and you used various brushes and lines. But I was seeing some stuff in Bone Parish where you were maybe using more screen tones. I don't know how you would call, if you call them that, where you guys are from, but it's sort of the dots, that you put over the pages. So how's your style evolved? Are you just experimenting all the time with different techniques?
Yes, that too. It also depends on the paper I use, and I knew for Bone Parish I wanted a bit of a like a rougher style, I guess, a bit more like texture. So I used a bit of a rougher paper. I used very smooth boards for pretty much everything before, I think. Also used a lot more brush for Bone Parish. I think I used a lot more like pens and that kind of stuff for the stuff before. Yeah, and on the Halloween special, I tried to like find a balance between where I want like cleaner, I guess, more superhero-y lines, and then for the gore, still a bit of texture.
Yeah, and I can, and we've talked about it before, but on this panel that we're looking at right now, I can definitely see some Sean Gordon Murphy influence there. Are you pretty inspired by his work?
I try not to rip him off, but I'm very much inspired by his. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I wasn't. Yeah, no rip off here. It's definitely your work, but I can definitely see the inspiration there. Yeah.
No, I've been a big fan of his work for years now.
He's a fan favorite. He's one of our favorites on this podcast as well. We love talking about his stuff.
Great, and I'm really excited about his Curse of the White Knight. I still haven't read the first issue.
Neither have I. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, but and you use acrylic for the white inks, like the white spots, like for the specks, or do you use white ink?
I think it's actually white acrylic ink.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken. Hold on, got the jar here. Yeah, it's called acrylic ink. It's De La Rowney. Not sponsored, but yeah. I also used a bit of airbrush on that page in particular.
Yeah, I can see
the glow. Yeah, I stopped doing that when I realized that Alex did a really great job, like adding like glow and like crazy pink hues to the pages. So
yeah, his that's something great about the book is these the moments where reality starts to bend. The colors, how they change and they become more hazy and they go over your line work it's beautiful. It's beautiful work. It's do you communicate pretty closely with your colorist on this book?
Usually I just let him do his thing because it's usually pretty good. So okay, you have to realize I'm German, so pretty good is pretty high praise, but I should probably step it up a little. His stuff is always great.
Yeah, I from reading the book, I know what you mean. It's amazing colors on there, and yeah. But I wanted to talk about this page specifically because Matt showed it to me a couple days ago, and when you're reading through a book, you don't really take the time to appreciate the composition of a page.
Yeah.
And this one, he really pointed it out as just how good the composition is right here. you do a great job with invisible lines leading your eye around the page. And so do you think about those lines a lot when you're composing things?
So for that panel, I for sure thought about it more than I usually do, because it was such a big panel and the first shot of the lab.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm pretty sure I tried to have walkways to lead the eye. You can see the left corner, the walkway leading towards that ladder, and then those 2 ladders across the bookshelf, leading the eye down.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can sort of zigzag between those corpses and the different tables. Then you also have the railing from the right corner, leading the eye down to the second panel. So I thought about that for sure.
It's beautiful composition and very natural. It didn't feel like you were literally drawing arrows. It just sort of flows really nicely. And even on the panel below that, where her eye line is sort of looking at that arm on the corpse, and then how that arm leads it into the sphere on the bottom there. It's a very masterfully composed page, and it can definitely shows your design strengths.
Some of that stuff just happens on accident, I guess. But when you think about it and it does work, then that's really satisfying. So thank you.
Yeah, but I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of that is is from, like you said, all the comics that you read growing up. That
for sure.
You're saying that you don't really think about it, but maybe just at a subconscious level, all of the imagery and the stuff that you've seen, you're still able to make that composition.
Yeah, all of the time. Just along the shots you pick. Your personal taste for the shots you like to use, and how much black that all of that is, I guess, an acquired taste. Or
and it's great to see your use of blank spaces, and then when you use those textures here, especially on it looks like you use ink wash for the gurneys down here. And I love that. You have this great, these really dark black spots, but I love that you took the time to show the metallic texture by using ink washes down here.
That was the idea, because when you have a lot of black, you can't everything just, every shadow can't be just pure black.
Right.
And I didn't use a lot of cross-hatching when I first started out on Bone Parish, but I started using that a lot more in the later issues. So I knew that the texture was supposed to be metallic. So whenever that happens, I try to do an ink wash or something like that to make it look, I guess, like it's reflecting some bounce light or something.
Yeah, that's a really good choice. It's really amazing. And I'm sorry I'm jumping around a little bit here, but my wife just recently read Warlords of Appalachia.
Mm-hmm.
And she loved it. She was just one of her. Yeah, she really loves the book, and loves Philip's writing on it and your artwork on it. But she wanted me to ask about the Blue Boys and their design in the book, and Philip's gone over it on our other interview. He talked about the Blue Boys and sort of their inspiration and things. But what was your approach to those guys? I'll try to pull up some visuals here really quick.
I'm not sure if I can remember how we if we decided an approach for them beforehand, or if I just started doing some sketches, and then I knew they were based on actual they were actual blue people, I think, due to some crazy drug side effects.
Yeah, it's definitely a meth representation. Yeah.
So that was in the back of my mind for sure. But then I really wanted to make them pretty like skinny and animalistic in the way they sort of moved, I guess. But I can't remember how much of that was in the script or we talked about beforehand, so I don't want to take any credit for that.
Yeah, and I love your intro to the characters and just the glowing eyes, and you do that really well in Bone Parish as well. You'll have these great moments where just the reflection of the eyes will come off of the characters right there. And that's a really great detail you don't see very much in comics. You'll see it in film, you know, like where it's shadows and you'll just get that one light from the eyes in there. And that's the only detail you see, but it's used so effectively here with just, you know, scaring you with these characters. They're mysterious, of course, but later on it's very good in sort of drama and menace as well. That's how you use your work.
It's almost a bit like Gollum, how his eyes would like glow in the darkness. And for Bone Parish, actually, Cullen wrote that in the scripts. I think the returning line is his eyes are pinpoints of light, something like that.
Oh wow, that's a really cool detail.
Returning phrase. So that's my cue. So I know that now we see Andre and not Grace, for example. Spoiler for the later issues of Bone Parish, but probably don't know what I'm talking about if you haven't read it.
Yeah. So everyone who's listening, they won't know what it means, hopefully, if they haven't read it. Yeah. It's just you handle these characters so well, the mystery around them, and especially right here where Chess meets them for the first time at this waterfall.
Yeah.
Right here, and this is the page that my wife really loved, so she wanted me to ask about it. When you were doing it, I love how you even did you draw in these like the music notes and everything like that in there, or was that something added in by the letterist?
I decided to hand draw the sound effects, which was a terrible idea.
It's pretty awesome, I think. Yeah.
It looks pretty cool because it pulls everything together, I think. But I have no idea about music. Like, I don't know anything about it. I like to listen to it, but aside from that, so getting that exactly right was pretty tricky. I think Philip had to like correct me a couple of times. And he sent me like notes on like whatever hotel he was staying at. Like he just photographed the notepad from there and sent me a corrected version. I think I redrew that like twice at least.
Wow, that's awesome.
Because I get something wrong.
Well, that's how it is with me and my wife, because she's a musician and I'm not at all. So if I have any music questions, I just go to her. And
I'm pretty one-dimensional. I'm just art, visual art.
You're very good at it, though. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. These pages are just stunning. We talked about it earlier that, you know, that most of this comes from your imagination is pretty spectacular. And I'm really looking forward to reading the rest of Bone Parish. I'm a little behind, but reading what else you do with that world as well.
What issue are you on at the moment?
I think I just finished issue 4 or 5, I think. So I'm pretty behind. Yeah.
I think issue 12 is coming out in August. So
nice.
Depending on how quickly you read, you might catch the second volume in September, and then the third volume in, I don't know, end of the year sometime.
Okay, very cool. And then do you have another project lined up after Bone Parish?
Yes, I'm doing some covers, and I'll be starting on my next 5-issue mini next week.
Oh, right. Yeah. Are you able to say what that is yet, or is it still under wraps?
No, it hasn't been announced yet, so...
Okay.
I'd love to tell you, but I can't.
Yeah.
No worries.
Yeah, no worries at all. It's we'll definitely be in line to pick an issue up, though, when it is announced and when it comes out. And Any plans? Any talks with Marvel about doing another like mini or anything like that, like another short story?
I'd like to do more for them.
Yeah.
The Avengers Halloween special was a lot of fun. I at first I wasn't quite sure if after Parish I'd transition to more superhero stuff like easily, because it was pretty like dark horror, talking heads, that kind of stuff. So I was a little worried if I'd be able to transition to more like action superhero stuff. But I think the Halloween special sort of showed a bit of I guess where both worlds meet. So yeah, hopefully more like that in the future.
Yeah, well, what's cool about Parish is, at least in the first couple issues, you have that great sequence at the end of issue 4. Let me pull it up really quick. This one right here, where this is a great action sequence, and then it ends horrifically, of course, because they blow the powder into the guy's face and he starts freaking out. But this sequence was really cool action-wise. And then there was one earlier where, what's his name, breathes it in and he becomes the Spec Ops guy. So you definitely handle action and horror really well. And this series is really cool because it's good. It's got a good blend of both.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And was this written into the script, the sort of Middle Eastern assassins?
Pretty sure Cullen. I read something we did a little afterward to wrap up the series, and I think he wanted, at the very beginning, he wanted to take it more into that direction with like I guess the Hashashin, or however they're called in English. So to go more into the that angle of like how the ash can be used as a like weapon, or as basically a superpower. Those pages were a lot of fun. I really enjoyed like castles, nature, that kind of stuff. I really enjoy. So hopefully some more fantasy adventure type stuff in the future.
Yeah, you're really good at that stuff.
So I have a question here, and I know this we talked about when you did the rural sort of Kentucky mountain scene, and Philip providing you some photo reference. But this first panel, the hotel in New Orleans, do you use things like Google like street views to get? Because I don't know if you've ever traveled to the the south of the United States of America and New Orleans. So do you use things like Google Street View there?
Yeah, I don't travel a lot. I just sit on my ass at home and draw. So Google. When I do my layouts, I usually try to collect all of the like images that I'd like to use for inspiration or reference.
Okay.
And then I pretty much do the layouts and try to get like to distill like the elements from the photos that I like into like, this could be a generic New Orleans street with a hotel. So it's pretty difficult, like actually, because I'm so used to like European, just like starting from things like electrical sockets or that kind of stuff is very different here. So sometimes you research stuff you wouldn't think about if you didn't have to draw it, I guess. But yeah, hopefully it's at least convincing.
No, it is.
Yeah. And yeah, hopefully we're not taking up too much of your time. It's been so great talking to you about all this stuff, and I'd love just to come on, just to have you back on, just to talk about this page, or any page really, because your work is really beautiful all across the board.
Thank you.
Yeah. Huge fan of it all. Like I said, I'd love to see you. Yeah, I'd love to see you keep working on anything really. love to see you do a fantasy stuff. I'd love to see you go back to the more tactical stuff that you did with War for the Planet of the Apes as well, because you did that stuff amazingly as well.
Yeah.
In other words, I'd love to see you on a John Wick book. That's what I'd love to see. Yeah. Yeah, because you do great with that.
Yeah, there are John Wick comics, I think. Who has the license for that? IDW or
Dynamite?
Dynamite.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I own two original art pages from that series, actually. So, and it's
Cool.
Yeah, your style would fit well within there. So that's a hint for you to go over to send your portfolio over there, because I would love to see you draw John Wick.
I already have so much stuff that I want to do, and that I have, like, I wouldn't say lined up, but I've talked with people about possibly doing in the future. So as I said earlier with Philip, I wish I could draw 3 times as fast. So just so I could do everything that I want to do. So yeah.
And as a devourer of your comics, I wish so too, but at the same time, I wouldn't want any of the quality that are in your comics to be lost in that speed, because it's, your work is really amazing.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
It's always tough for me to see older pages, because I'm really unhappy with the work.
Oh, really?
Yes. I actually wanted to ask Philip about that, if he as a writer feels similar about his older work, because usually when the pages or when the finished books, the comps come in the mail, I usually don't like some of the pages anymore. Wow. So it's tricky, but it's good, because you're, I guess, growing and learning, but all the work is always a little bit of an issue for me, I guess. So yeah. I'm happy to hear that you like it.
I love it all. Yeah, I was introduced to your work when I picked up the War for the Planet of the Apes books, and when the movie came out, because I loved the movie so much, I needed something else.
The movie was great.
Yeah, it was. But the thing is that I picked up the comic not really expecting much. I just needed something, But the script was. What'd you say?
Did you read it before or?
No. I watched it. I watched the movie first and then read it. But you added your artwork, and the script added to my experience of the film. And we won't have too much time to get into that much of it. But there's this moment where Bad Ape, he loses the little ape when he's running away.
Yeah.
And I was already sympathetic to that character in the movie, but when I read that, I watched it again and I felt even more sympathy for him, where I was just like, oh, wow. And that moment is wordless in the book.
The moment was already pretty powerful in the script. But what I'm really actually proud of is I watched the trailer and I saw that Bad Ape had this crocodile, I guess, plush figure. Is that how it's called?
Mm-hmm.
And so I put that in the hands of the little ape at the beginning.
Oh.
So
yeah.
Yeah.
I need to go back and look at that again.
The little crocodile. Like as a token. Is that the word?
Yeah. It's a little token of his memory, and that makes sense with the character that he collects stuff. Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah. Oh yeah. It was such a good series, and then actually it was interesting because I knew you did Warlords, and then I saw Philip was doing a signing for Aquaman Annual in our area, so I went to meet him, and I saw Warlords on his table, and I was like, "Holy crap! I'm a huge fan of this artist's work." So yeah. So I've just been hooked on all your stuff. It's pretty amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Glad you're enjoying it.
I love it.
It really means. It sounds so corny, but it really means a lot to me if people actually get something out of my work, because it used to be very, I guess, selfish. Just sitting there and drawing. But now you can actually share it with people, and they can enjoy it. So it's not just being an asshole and not doing something with your friends because you want to draw selfishly, So now I have an excuse for my antisocial behavior. There you go.
Well, I'm excited to see how New York Comic-Con will be for you, because then you'll have even more people who know your work there, and it'll be amazing, I'm sure.
Yeah, I didn't get a table, so I'll just be roaming, I guess.
Oh.
But yeah, last year was pretty crazy too. I awkwardly introduced myself to a lot of people who now may or may not remember who I am.
That's
Oh,
awesome.
I think they know who you are now.
I think they do. Yeah. You're. I'm pretty sure you're on everyone's radar, especially after, you've had 3 amazing graphic novel level books, and then of course the amazing, you've had your amazing stuff on Mighty Morphin, and then on the Halloween special last year. So I think you're on a lot of people's radar. We're just honored that you came onto our podcast to talk about it before you get too big.
I don't think I'll ever be too big. Like, comics keep you pretty humble. No worries.
Yeah.
So I know you joked about being antisocial, but do you want to tell people where they can find you online to keep up with you and maybe hear more about this project that's coming up?
I'm not very good about my social media, so I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, I'm also on Facebook. I can't remember the handles or whatever, but if you just search my name, Jonas Scharf, I'm pretty sure my pages will come up. So
yeah, we'll put links to that in our show notes for this podcast.
For being the worst,
No, your life is probably for the best for not being consumed with social media.
Comics Twitter is crazy. I'll say that. I'll say that much. It's a parallel universe.
Yes,
which I don't claim to understand.
Yeah, it's nuts on there. Yeah, but your Instagram is awesome. I would recommend everyone to check that out. Yeah.
It's a bit tricky. I try to post like non-spoilery stuff that I also like how it turned out. So yeah, every now and then I'll post something.
Okay. Well, I'm going to wrap us up, but Noah, do you have any last thoughts, any last questions for Jonas?
Oh, so many, but I'm hoping that means maybe he'll come back on and answer him again sometime. Because
if your listeners are not tired of my like stumbling and rambling, then
oh no, I mean I would listen to this interview a lot. So yeah, it's great to hear your process. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, Jonas, I want to thank you again, and we'll keep an eye out. And when some of these projects get released, we'll make sure that our accounts let people know that they're out. If people want to give us a follow, we are on Twitter at ConstructingComPod. We're on Instagram at ConstructingComicsPod, and we are on Facebook at Facebook.com/ConstructingComics. We also have a YouTube channel under the same name of Constructing Comics, where we sometimes dive deep into the visuals of comic storytelling. But I'd like to once again thank Jonas for joining us, and we'll be back with another episode very soon.